Hey, Crystal here from You Grow Girl. Find out what I discovered after an EMDR session and find out how my favorite movie as a child creates the perfect metaphor for how my childhood sexual abuse infiltrated all my adult romantic relationships. It's probably not what you think, because up until this point where I created this video and had myself one of them light bulb moments, well, it certainly wasn't how I saw things. So I got out of this EMDR today, and I didn't have any new flash memories of the actual sexual abuse, but it hit this part, and basically I had this memory of sitting at my windowsill. And I've had this memory before, but I didn't really connect it as much. But I was sitting there staring out this window, and it was this overwhelming feeling of, if he would just come back, all this pain would go away. And I think so I cried during the EMDR, and I had a good cry. Like, I could tell it was like a release. And it was a release of feeling like my dad, like he didn't save me. Through the EMDR today, I think I discovered that the abandonment feelings run deep, and that I have to work on those and work through those, because I think probably a lot of that comes into my marriage. And I had this flash of my marriage vows. And I remember just thinking with my dad, if he would just come back, he would save me from all of this. But I didn't want him to just come back and save me. I wanted him to come back and marry my mom again. I wanted my mom and my dad to be back together, and I wanted to go back to the farm because the farm was safe for me. So anyways, I had this flash of my vows to my husband, and the line was, "And your gentle soul has saved me from the pains of my past." And I realized that that's so untrue, because nobody can save me but myself. And I think in every relationship I was in, I was looking for them to save me. I know in all my relationships, I was looking for them to save me. And I think that comes from the feelings of wanting my dad to come back and save me. Has anyone else out there looked to their partner as the solution to their pain? Let me know in those comments below. So this was a particularly hard video for me to watch back, as currently my husband and I have been separated for a little over a year. So I've been fighting off some of that internal negative self-talk, but trying to focus on all the lessons that I've learned from our relationship. He truly was one of my greatest teachers. So my whole life, I have had very, very combative romantic relationships, meaning a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming and yelling. And if any of my ex-boyfriends out there are watching this right now, well, they could definitely attest to that. The common denominator in all of these relationships was me. Now, I'm not saying this in a self-loathing kind of way, not at all, but rather in a self-discovery context. I played a huge part in the problems that kept arising in my intimate relationships, and I understood on an intrinsic level that my abuse had something to do with my inability to maintain a loving and peaceful relationship. So for this reason and many others, over the last 2 years, I embarked on what I called my journey to heal. And I explored every and any form of treatment I could find to help heal. I was at a point in my life where I was desperate to finally find some kind of peace within myself, and ultimately within my romantic relationships. The knowledge and insight I uncovered about myself over the last 2 years and continue to uncover, well, it's pretty freaking awesome. For me, knowledge is power, and the more I can understand about myself, the more I have the power to change the things that I want to change. So here are some things I know about myself that I didn't know back when I was filming that diary entry. Number 1, I project. My rage and extreme anger is not usually coming from what my partner has actually done, And I'll emphasize usually, because there has been instances that it wasn't projection and it was directed at the partner who had done something very hurtful and earned that anger. But usually those extreme feelings, they were actually surfacing because I was being triggered. A feeling, a sensation, a smell, a wrong look, something was triggering my limbic system as a threat and throwing me into full-on survival mode. Number 2, I may not always be able to know exactly what triggered me, but I can learn to recognize when I'm being triggered. It's hard sometimes to understand on a conscious level what our unconscious limbic system might perceive as a threat. I will never forget the first time one of my children triggered me. It was the first time that I realized there was no rational thought to those feelings, and it really shook me up. My oldest daughter, who was 2.5 at the time, was sitting on the kitchen counter, legs swinging back and forth, and I was standing in front of her brushing her teeth. Well, her little itty bitty foot accidentally brushed the inside of my thigh, and in an instant, this very intense wave of anger came over me, and the urge to yell at her to stop it came over me as well. Instead, I froze. Thank God. I just stood there in shock, almost paralyzed by what was happening in my body and the emotions I was feeling. At the time, I had no understanding about how trauma is stored in our bodies and how that simple touch had sent my limbic system into full-fledged survival mode. It was so scary for me because it felt so out of my control. There was no reason to have those physical feelings of disgust and shame coming out of an encounter with my 2-year-old daughter. I was seriously just left thinking, what the fuck? And that moment was just the beginning of a series of triggers that would eventually lead me to my journey to heal. Motherhood for me brought an enormous amount of my trauma to the surface. And until I dedicated myself to healing from that trauma, my life felt like it was in a tailspin. It was only after learning the brain science behind the limbic system that it all made sense. And once something makes sense, you take your power back. Because now you can work with that. You can't fix something unless you know where it was broken in the first place. And the communication between my prefrontal cortex, my rational brain, and my limbic system, my irrational subconscious brain, well, it was broken. Which brings me to my third fact. And my third point, if I can recognize I'm being triggered, then there are ways to get that prefrontal cortex communicating with my limbic system so it doesn't just take over and throw me into full-on life or death mode. So how do you do that? Because you can't just tell your limbic system to stop. It truly really has no rational way of communicating. So your job is to strengthen your prefrontal cortex and get it to start talking and building trust regularly with the limbic system. Well, how the hell do you do that? Well, a treat I went to for survivors called The Haven taught the concept as the 5 strategies to healing. Check out our resource page on yougrowgirl.ca for more details and exercises to try surrounding these strategies. But basically, it goes as follows. You've got awareness. In order to eventually manage your emotions, you must become aware of them. This is where you need to recognize that what you are feeling. This is especially important when you feel like you are in moments of crisis or being triggered, which as a survivor can be a shitload of the time. Then you have acknowledgement, accepting your truth, whatever it is. So for me in that moment, it was accepting that even my 2-year-old's accidental touch could trigger my feelings of shame and disgust. Power through surrender. Just let it be. This concept is based around the fight, flight, or freeze response. It poses the theory that there is a 4th response, surrender. If you as a survivor can recognize you are being triggered, then you can choose to ride out those feelings and just let it be. Way easier said than done, yes, but it is possible. I'm still working on that one, and sometimes I get it, and sometimes I don't. Oftentimes, breathing technique helps me with this one. Mindfulness. This is similar to awareness, but this is the daily practice of strengthening that prefrontal cortex. Whereas the awareness principle, well, it refers more to when you're in crisis mode and being triggered. If you can daily strengthen that prefrontal cortex through mindfulness, you will have more power to choose your reactions in your day-to-day experiences. So more power to just let it be. So basically, you need to strengthen the rational part of your brain so that it can rein in that irrational part of your brain and get that limbic system to chill out. And I promise you, as a childhood sexual abuse survivor, your limbic system, well, it's Goliath, and you're sending in David, your prefrontal cortex. So you're gonna wanna prepare him. Next is faith. This is a huge one for me. For me personally, this principle has two parts. Faith in a higher power, something greater than myself showing me the way. And the second part is faith in my own power to make change through my journey to heal. I think it's important for me to address in this moment my faith, as throughout this video series, you will hear me reference God and my spirituality and how it applies to my healing journey. First and foremost, I want to state that this is a non-judgmental space and an all-inclusive space. It is my belief that spirit comes to everyone in its own unique way in which it needs to be received. For some, that may be religion. For others, it may be a direct sense of connection to spirit outside of religion. For some, it's science. Others, it's nature. Whatever holds true to you, whatever feels aligned and right in your heart, this is what I mean when I say faith. To have faith is to draw from a power higher than yourself. And I know I've said this before, but as survivors, we could definitely use more power in our lives. So tapping into one's faith on their path to healing, it's really important. So I've given you insight into what I've learned over the past 2 years on my path to healing. But now it's time to talk about the one thing that I just learned about myself while doing the research for this video, and how Beauty and the Beast is the perfect metaphor for my romantic relationships. So as I was researching information around relationship complexities and survivors of childhood sexual abuse and the idea of the save me complex, I kept bumping into information about attachment styles and how they affect romantic relationships. And it got me thinking about a conversation that I had a long time ago with a therapist that had actually suggested that I dig deeper into the concept of attachment styles and how survivors can often develop unhealthy attachment styles in adult relationships. So being the seeker of knowledge that I was and that I am, that's exactly what I did. Here's the problem though. I couldn't relate. I kept going back to the same definitions, the same descriptions of the 4 attachment styles, yet none of them hit bang on. I saw parts of myself in certain styles, but there was always some part of the attachment that really wasn't me. So I just kind of let it go. As with all the research I do and all the different forms of therapies I try and concepts I explore, I understand that we are all different, and there will be things that I can relate to and help me, and concepts that I won't relate to and that won't help me, and vice versa for other survivors. So yeah, I just kind of let that theory fade away out of my thoughts. That was until I started doing the research for this video. So yes, there are the 4 basic attachment styles, but then I found out about the missing one. Well, ladies, when I read this one, that was it. No ifs, ands, or buts. There was me. It was all there. All my relationship messiness laid out in front of me in one simple to understand theory. The forgotten, disorganized attachment style. Okay, I'm going to read an insert from the article I read from Psychology Today about the disorganized attachment style. Let me know if any of what I read resonates with you in the comments below. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm just going to read a little insert, but we will post the whole article on yougrowgirl.ca. So go take a look on there and read through the whole thing. Alongside anxious and avoidant attachment, disorganized attachment, which is the most extreme of the insecure attachment styles, is hypothesized to be an outcome of abuse and trauma in childhood. For example, stemming from when an attachment figure, a parent, or anyone who may have had a close hand in helping raise the child offers inconsistent emotional support and abuse. This can include verbal, physical, or sexual abuse, or the child witnessing an attachment figure commit a traumatizing act, such as a father hitting his spouse. In either case, and this is where it really resonated with me, in either case, the consequences are twofold. The child understands the betrayal of safety that has occurred, and the child understands that a beloved parent or parental figure can become a serious threat to anyone in his proximity, including the child. At this point, the child learns that the attachment figure, who he or she loves and who is responsible for his or her safety, is also someone to be feared. People who get attached in a disorganized way oscillate from two biological drives whenever the opportunity to attach comes about in life. The need to belong, to love and connect with others, and the need to survive, to protect oneself. Later, particularly in romantic relationships, people with this style of attachment often feel fear and anxiety when forming intimate relationships and suffer from a negative self-image and extremely damaging self-talk. They often feel intense loneliness because of an earnest want for genuine connection, but the stress and fear response linked to that want causes them to act erratically, driving away potential connection. So how does all this information lead to a metaphor about Beauty and the Beast? Well, my whole life, my favorite Disney movie was Beauty and the Beast. And I was sure that I connected with the movie because of the love conquers all concept. And I liked that in the movie, it was Belle that saved the day, not the handsome prince like many of the other Disney movies. I was a strong woman who could relate to the strong woman in the film who saved the day with her love. But after doing the research for this video and after reading about the disorganized attachment style, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm not Belle. I'm the freaking Beast. How I love is just how the Beast loves. All messed up, full of anger, yet at the same time desperate to connect and feel love. Hot and cold, angry and kind, fierce and gentle. It was all making sense. The story in which my heart was connecting to was not that of Belle. No, my heart was connecting to the Beast, who desperately wanted to be loved, but had no clue how to receive and show love. Essentially, my intimate relationships were a mess, or what I now like to say, an outcome of my disorganized attachment style. It is my belief that the first step to change is understanding. If you are out there and you are struggling with your intimate relationships, if you are feeling helpless and defeated, start with the understanding part. Research the different attachment styles. See what you can relate to. It's amazing how much old patterns can lose their grip on you when you finally start to understand where they come from in the first place. It really is the first critical step. I wanted to take a minute to ask you for your ideas on topics you would like me to discuss in this Time to Heal video series. My purpose and my why for creating the Survivors playlist is simple: to help. But first, I need to know what you're struggling with. So let me know what some of your biggest challenges are as a survivor. And always remember that you are not alone in this. If we can come together as a community and champion our fellow survivors to jumpstart their road to recovery, well then together we can all play the role of Belle and save the Beast with our love. For more information on the tools and exercises I use to tap into the 5 strategies of healing I discussed in this video, visit our website at yougrowgirl.ca. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified every week when I post new videos. And remember, I can't do this without you. So please share the shit out of this if you can and hit that like button. Until next time, stay strong, trust in this process, and show yourself a little forgiveness today.